How do you know how to pick a coconut? So one of the things you do is when you go to the store, you want to shake it up and hear the water inside it. Next thing you want to do is wash it just on the outside, where you find what we call the three eyes of a coconut. And those are going to be very, well, the softer three spots of a coconut, but the rest of it is really pretty hard. And I have to tell you, this is the one part that's probably the least fun part about making coconut milk, because it takes a little bit of work, as in opening it up and pulling the guy out, the pulp out. However, it is so delicious that, you know, I see no reason why not to do it. The other thing is, you might be asking, so what's the hassle about? Why can't I just get it from a can? Sure, there's a couple of problems with a can. Number one, it's full of additives and preservatives. Coconut, when you make coconut milk, it goes bad within 2-3 days, keeping it outside. In the fridge, it will survive for about 5 to 6 days at the most. So what I do is I typically get 3 or 4 coconuts in one roll, and when I mess up the kitchen, I just mess it up all the way and make coconut milk from 4 coconuts, and that way I get about 4 liters or 4 quarts of coconut. What do I do with it? I put it in a freezer. A lot of people have asked me this before. Oh, I thought you can't freeze food in glass. Of course you can. All you have to do is just leave it at least an inch above the rim of the, so it's not completely full, and that way when food freezes, it expands, and so you've got enough of room for that to happen. Okay, so this is where we're going to put our coconut milk. Today I'm just going to work with one. Okay, so I have a special cloth that's used specifically for cracking a coconut, and that's like a dirty old one. The other tools you would need is a hammer, good old hammer, and a screwdriver. We're also gonna use a glass in order to catch the coconut water, and like I was saying, a mason jar in order to store the coconut milk. We're also gonna use a blender in order to blend the coconut with water. I'll show you that in a second. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is point the screwdriver to where the eye is, and you can hear like a hissing sound. That's when we know you often get a bad one. Okay, this is a bit of a hard one, so I'm going to try the other eye. So we've got 2 holes, it should be enough. Now, all you need to do is just turn it upside down and let the water start coming out. Here's a little trick. If you're making more than 1 coconut, what I would suggest is when you open up the second or third, get the water out to a separate glass. Don't put it in the same glass, just because there's a chance of a coconut being bad, and you're going to smell it right away. It's a very sort of bitter or foul smell, and if you're not sure of the smell, just taste it. Don't swallow it, but just put it in your mouth, and you're going to find it very hard to even swallowing it. So for sure this is a bad one. Don't try to convince yourself that this is, you know, it's just really foul. So what you don't want to do is, if the first one is a good one and the second one you start pouring the liquid and the water into the same glass, then you're going to contaminate the first one, so it's a goner. So I always, you know, advise you to separate the waters from each other. So I'm just going to smell this guy here and see how that goes. Yeah, and it's a nice, sweet taste of water, but it's exactly what we need. Just as this is coming out, I also wanted to share with you, the 1 glass of coconut water has got 8 times more potassium than a banana. And for those of you who are athletes and sportsmen, and you know you need your potassium in order for your muscles to really function well, we typically do a lot of potassium, a lot of bananas before an event and during an event and after an event in order to replenish. Coconut water has got, imagine, 8 times more of that, so I really encourage you to do that. The other thing with coconut water is it's got beautiful electrolytes in it. So put away all your Gatorades, which have got a lot of artificial sugars in it, including high fructose corn syrup, which is mind-boggling to me. How can they put such toxic substance in sports drinks? But they do. And instead revert to a coconut. Now, not everybody has the time to do what I'm doing. So one of the things that you might want to do, and you probably have seen these before, coconut water that's packed and offered in most of the supermarkets and health stores today. Again, like everything else, you want to go slow on drinks like this too, because you know, after all, if you just look at the back of the packaging, you look at the amount of sugar, it's got 11 grams of sugar. 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon, so you've got almost 3 teaspoons of sugar in a small drink like this. So it's okay, just as long as you know it, alright? Okay, and the water just came out. Just look at that. We've got this beautiful 1 glass of coconut water. I'm going to drink that later and put it aside. One of the things I'm going to be making later, and there's going to be another video for that, is I'm going to be making coconut water kefir, because I've got kefir grains, this little mushroom that's going to be eating it all up. So just stay tuned for that one. Meantime, this is my coconut that's really quite empty right now. Now this is the messy part that's coming along, okay? And I know most people don't like doing it, but here it is. So I've got this cloth that I always use for cracking coconuts, and it's kind of dirty and I don't mind destroying it further. So I would wrap it around like this and literally just start hammering it. You feel there's more sides to be cracked. Okay, as you can see, I get a lot of pieces here now. Oh, you know, I was really lucky. For a lot of the shell just came off. So that was easy to separate. Now sometimes you get coconuts, for whatever reason, that it's very hard to separate the pulp from the shell. So one of the little tricks that I want to teach you is you can pop the unseparated pieces into, which I'm gonna do this. You can start putting them into, you can put them into a preheated oven for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and when you take them out, they're going to be really beautifully separated. It will be so easy to separate them from the shell. Okay, so I'm just going to put these in here. This is all, I've been really lucky, because typically that's a lot of work. So the only one that's not separated is this guy here, so I just want to show you how to get this off. And the easiest thing to do is to take a good knife. Now when you work with a knife and separating coconut, the pulp from the shell, is always remember that the sharp blade to keep it away from your hands. And so when you're working on it, in case you do anything, it's always the bland side that will, if it touches you, that's it. So like for example right now here, I'm just gonna stick it in between the pulp and the shell and lift it up. As you can see, it pretty easily came off. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is give them a little bit of a rinse, just because there's a bit of that brown fluff around them. Blender ready, and what I'm going to do is we'll take the pulp and then cut it to, you know, just kind of rough pieces, not too big, not too small, no need to have to fuss around too much about it. It's all going to go in the blender. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I've already pre-warmed some water here. It's not boiling hot, it's just warm, very warm, so that the warmer it is, the more stuff you extract from, the more fat and ingredients you extract from the pulp. You know, my cooking is always very much based on whatever feels right in my heart, and just by combining and tasting things. So I don't know how much water I should put in. Well, I can tell you is that the more water you put in, the more diluted the milk is going to be. The less water you put in, the more creamy it's going to become. So my ideal, the one that I like to use, is to kind of standard coconut milk, is just to nicely cover it, or perhaps just to have a little bit more than what the cover of the coconut is, so it covers the coconut pulp, and that's pretty much it. And it's as simple as now popping it in and blending it for about a minute. Okay, well, once it's blended for about a minute, you're gonna have this thick coconut soup really in there. And then what we're gonna do is, I have this big sieve I like to use, but you don't have to have a sieve. What's most important though is to basically actually separate now the flakes right? The pulp from the milk, from the water. So what I'm going to use is one of my favorite things to use is basically, I think in the store in the United States they call it flour sacks. But you can also use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth, however, will have to, you probably need to use 2 or 3 layers in order to make sure there's not too much stuff that goes through it. This one I find is optimal because it's thick enough to make it really nice. And so let me move things aside a little so that you can see better what exactly that I'm doing. I actually like this part very, very much. Okay. So, and all I'm going to do is just pour the whole concoction right in here. Okay. Next, grab the corners. And all you need to do is just start squeezing it out. In fact, we don't even need the sieve here anymore. It's just nice to hold things in place, but after that, it's all good. And squeeze it again. And again. As you can see, this is just nice and warm. If this was really hot, I'll need to wait till it gets cooler before I touch it, because otherwise it's very hot on your hands. Okay. Now, what's inside here is coconut milk. I'll show you that in a second, but I just want to show you also that what's left here, you can easily use that for coconut flour, or use that in protein powders that I'm planning to make later on. Meantime, let me show you what to do with the lovely coconut milk. So here's our quart of mason jar. In fact, this could be even more than a quart. Well, let's see. And all I'm going to do is just pour it in. There we go. And it's lovely, fresh, amazingly fresh smelling and tasting coconut milk. Now you may ask, what would you want to use coconut milk for? A couple of applications. My favorite is to use it in all sorts of smoothies first thing in the morning. See, one of my big tips for most of you and my clients is to use as much as possible fat and protein in the morning and as little of carbohydrates and sugar as you can. And that will really help you stabilize the sugar levels across the day. It will make you feel very fulfilled and satisfied when you do that from breakfast all the way till lunch. You will not be snacking, you will not be crashing at 11 o'clock with hypoglycemia or just being hungry and be uncomfortable and moody. Coconut milk is just a fantastic source for such breakfast. So all the smoothies that you see on my website, all you have to do is just be using fresh coconut milk as part of the recipe. What else? I could use that also in soaking chia seeds and making chia seed pudding. That's another recipe that's on my website. Just warming it up a little bit and soaking the chia seeds in that is fantastic. For those of you who love to make curries, this is a really great way of using fresh coconut milk rather than from a can. And if you want to make a thicker coconut milk that's just more like a cream, you can easily do that. Just add less water into the mix that I was showing you just now. And you know, really, it's just such a wonderful replacement for anything that you'd use a traditional milk for, cow's milk. A lot of people are having dairy intolerances and just don't feel very good in their digestive tract when they eat a dairy. And so this is such a great substitute for that. So I'll definitely recommend. Just on the one last note, I'm always asked a lot of questions about the saturated fat in coconut milk and coconut oil. And it is true, there's a very high content of that. It's a different and a very long topic about saturated fats and the controversy of that, whether that really contributes towards high cholesterol. But all I want to say is I want to leave you with this one thought for today, and that is, just in case you are afraid of overdoing coconuts, is that the whole of south of India lives on coconuts. They eat coconuts in everything, for breakfast, lunch and dinner. They use it in their hair, they use it on their skin. It's coconut every day at every meal. And yet the south of India does not seem to have problems, coronary diseases, as we have in Western countries. It's only in once the Western diet came to town, now these sort of diseases are becoming prevalent in India, but this was never their problem before. So that's just the one thought that I just want you to take with you when you have hesitations about coconut. Meantime, enjoy it. Ah.